Chase or fade for me. Agree or disagree with the following. It's looking like both DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray will both return to the Cardinals lineup this weekend. So Murray would cost you $7,500. Chase or fade, he's a great DFS play here despite that chunky price tag.
I go fade here. First of all, I don't know how mobile he's going to be. You know, even before the injury, he was running less frequently. And I really want, if I'm going to pay up for $7,500 for a quarterback, I want to get the rushing yards and the possibility of a rushing touchdown. The Bears are one of the best against quarterbacks, number 9 on the season fantasy points against. In the last 4, it's actually they're 7th against. So they're a tough, relatively tough matchup on the road. I think I fade that price. I'd probably go $6,000 for Derek Carr instead.
Okay, Reid Fowler, what do you want to do here, man? Because this dude, even before he hurt his ankle, only failed to reach 20 DraftKings points in like 2 contests.
Yeah, I mean, when you have to be great, there has to be unequivocally no doubt that you are going to be getting the rush yards, right? That is a cheat code in fantasy football right now, and that's just not the case. Jeff laid it out pretty nicely, right? He's gotten 1 rushing yard, 6, 10, 21 in his last 4 games that he's played. And since his back-to-back QB1 finishes in week 1 and 2, right, he's finished 3 outside the top 15, and 2 of those were outside the top 20. So what is Kyler doing right now to get the moniker of great? Like, I think we like to think that he has the ability to be that. We saw that, flashes of it in the first couple of games, but since then, he's just not, it's not the case. And you have to equate it too against other guys on this slate, right? Derek Carr is definitely in play. I think Herbert, Hurts, those Lamar. I think Lamar, if there's any player that I want to pay up for, and I know this is probably not going to be popular, it's Lamar Jackson. I think he's faced some pretty tough pass defenses, but I think he gets a nice one this week in Pittsburgh. They're not the best. They're 29th in weighted DVOA. And so, I'm going to take him and pay up for him as opposed to Kyler, which we haven't seen since week 8.
Okay, so Pearce, Cardinals had a bye last week. Murray was close to playing in week 11, so he's likely close to full strength.
I don't know if I would go that far. He's likely close enough to play, but full strength. And let's assume you're right. Let's say he is at full strength. Are they going to completely unshackle him? Is he going to be full go? Are they going to let Kyler Murray be Kyler Murray? The answer to that's no. There's not any questions. I mean, some people will come into this matchup saying, well, there's a couple questions surrounding it. We know this. Jeff talked about this. Heading before the injury, they were not running with him. Reid just mentioned that, gave you the numbers. They're not running the ball with Kyler Murray, and they shouldn't. They can win games without letting him run. Now in the playoffs, as we get close to the end of the season, if they've got to win games, then sure, you maybe consider rostering him if they're going to unleash him and let him go wild. But I don't see him going wild. I don't think he is close to 100%. It's not the best matchup. If he was $1,000 cheaper, then we could have a pretty good debate. But right now, I don't think there's any debate at all. You just can't play him.
Again, scoring at least 22 DraftKings points in 6 of 7 healthy games. Yes, health is a big word there. Speaking of pricey, though, no one is more expensive on the main slate than Colts running back Jonathan Taylor, guys. $9,200. Reid, start me off here. Chase or fade, he scores a touchdown in his 10th straight game, and he's worth every penny against the Texans.
Well, there's 2 parts of that question. I think I'm going to chase the touchdown, but fade that he's worth the $9,200. I mean, like you mentioned it, when is it ever a smart play to pay the most expensive guy? And we've seen when you pay up for the most expensive player, like the Christian McCaffreys of the world, especially at running back, they can get dinged up and be out of the game. I'm not saying that's the case. And Jonathan Taylor is someone who's been doing this fairly often, where he gets you these absolute monster games. And last season, he put up an average of 20 DK fantasy points against Houston in 2 matchups. I think he has to score twice to get to this number. And I think, he's done that before. And I know he's capable of doing it, but I think the smart play is to go down to Eckler or Mixon. I think that game is the one you want to attack. And Jonathan Taylor, if he's going to be like 5% roster because it's too expensive, then yeah, of course it's a smart play. But $9,200 right now for a guy that they might not necessarily need down the stretch in this game, I'm going to fade that.
Okay, Pearce, what's a smart play here? Paying up for Jonathan Taylor or going elsewhere?
I would pay up. I'll chase based on his talent, based on the matchup. I know that there is concerns that maybe Indianapolis blows them out and he doesn't get enough action in the second half. And that's an interesting what if. But even if that's the case, who's likely going to lead to that blowout? Who's going to put the points on the board that gives the Colts the comfortable margin where they can rest him. It's likely going to be Jonathan Taylor. In the goal line, we have seen Taylor get goal line work all season long, and it makes sense. Do you want Carson Wentz you want him throwing the ball around inside the goal line with his propensity to make mistakes and turn the ball over? Just continue feeding Jonathan Taylor. We know that he'll get you over 100 yards volume-wise as long as it's a normal game. He's also active in the passing game this season. As I already mentioned, the goal line work. And the Texans allow the most adjusted yards to running backs at 4.8 yards per carry. That's just to regular running backs. What can Jonathan Taylor do to this team? I will pay for it.
Dude, Jeff, he had nearly 32 DK fantasy points against Houston back in week 6, too.
Yeah, all that was in the second half, though. It was a weird game where Taylor was almost ignored the entire first half of that game. He doesn't get Derrick Henry volume, and I wish he would, but the one time he did against Buffalo, we saw what happened. But, if I'm far more inclined to chase at a high-priced running back than I am a high-priced quarterback, and especially one in this instance here with Taylor. I think the squeaky wheel gets the grease. We saw how he got ignored for 25-plus snaps last week. That's not going to happen this week. I think he's going to get fed regularly early on in this game. I know Houston in the last 4 weeks hasn't been as pliant against running backs, but look at who they were going against. Miami. They were going against Tennessee without Derrick Henry. Last week, the Jets without Michael Carter. I think that Jonathan Taylor gets well against the Texans. I think they try to go to him early. I think I'm inclined to chase this price. Okay, let's chase or fade what's currently the fattest Week 13 spread on the DraftKings Sportsbook. You've got the Rams favored by 12.5 at home against America's team. That's the Jacksonville Jaguars. A bounce back here, winning by 2 touchdowns and easily covering, Pearce. You want to chase or fade that?
I'm going to chase. I'm not completely comfortable with them covering this. This smells like Jacksonville versus Buffalo, too.
Yeah.
And I know that game, it was, Josh Allen was making mistakes and turning the ball over. Well, Matt Stafford has been making some of those mistakes recently as well. But ultimately, I think Los Angeles just is going to get right in this spot. They're at home. But if you do want to pull for the Jaguars, as I mentioned, Stafford's been making mistakes. The offensive line for the Rams, which has been a strength all season long, has struggled in the last couple games. One of the things that the Jaguars do well is in terms of pressure, that they're 6th in blitzing, 10th in quarterback hurries, 11th in quarterback knockdowns, 13th in quarterback pressure. Now, they don't get very many sacks, but that's okay. As long as you're putting pressure, you can force Stafford into some mistakes, and maybe they cover this game. I still think, though, that the Rams will cover.
All right, Jeff, taking the massive amount of points here, though, could prove to be wise because LA 0-5 ATS in its last 5 games as a favorite.
Yeah, I think it's almost a sucker play to go take the Rams, but I'm just that sucker. I think I'm looking at them trying to get well. I look at just the Jacksonville offense. I look at the schemes that they run to try to free up those wide receivers and actually the lack thereof. And the lack of playmakers that they have in the passing game. I think this is a game where Aaron Donald gets well. I think it's where the Rams defense is the key to this cover. I'm not comfortable with it, but at gun to head, I'm taking the Rams side of things.
Reid, Jags are 4-0 ATS in their last 4 road games against teams with a winning record. Come on, dude.
So, Jeff, I know you're new to the program, but the America's team part of this portion is completely self-appointed by Emerson Latzia. No one thinks that Jacksonville Jaguars is America's team, except for everyone in Jacksonville, which Emerson is a resident of back in his early years, his formative.
Thank you, Reid. Thank you for your support.
Just want to make that clear. That not all of us believe that's the case. To Jacksonville's credit, to what Emerson just said, each time they've been double-digit dogs, I'll give you the one further, they've covered. But they have the second lowest plus-minus ATS when they're on the road at minus 7.6. Which means, if you just want to use that simple math, that they'll lose this game by 20 points. I don't think that's the case, right? I don't think that the Rams need that, but the Rams need momentum, right? We've seen these guys play below average, and they need momentum. Not saying that this is a beauty contest, but they need to put up points and put them up in large bunches on this team, and they can, right? Jacksonville in every positional advantage that they have every positional advantage, right? Defensive line against O-line, receivers against DBs, quarterbacks, coaches. You name it, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I said this about the Bills, and that 9-6 game completely thwarted my theory. But I think this is a Rams team that's absolutely going to blow them out. So, yeah, I think they're going to come for Chase.
You know what's crazy is we talked about it yesterday, too, on a Wednesday edition of the Slate with Jeff Ulrich, Reid, is the Lions, because of that tie with Pittsburgh, had a better record in the month of November than the Rams, who has a 3-game losing streak, for crying out loud. That's pretty sad. Last one here, AFC North. The line has already moved from, what, 2.5 to 4 in favor of the Ravens. So chase or fade for me here. That extra 1.5 points gives you the confidence to back the Steelers, Jeff.
I'm going to say chase. I'm agonizing over this one. First of all, I hate the Steelers, but so I'm trying to get over that as the only Bengals fan on the West Coast. That I feel that way. But T.J. Watt likely being out is a reason to kind of want to fade that. But at the same time, I don't think Lamar's 100%. I think that you look at what he did. He didn't have the zip on his passes on Sunday night. I think that they're having a hard time trying to free him up in the running game. There's a lot of familiarity between the two teams. I think this is going to be a taut battle, and I think it's going to be decided by a field goal.
Okay, Reid, what about you? How much confidence do you have here backing the Steelers?
I'm with Jeff. It's not that I hate the Steelers, but I hate what kind of performance they're putting out there week over week because we don't know, right? Jeff Ulrich, a friend of the show, obviously, at DraftKings, loves the Steelers in this matchup, and I don't know why. They're 29th in weighted DVOA on defense. The Steelers do not have T.J. Watt. I mean, the line moved, and it's crazy the market thinks that T.J. Watt is worth 1.5, right? Kind of where it was and where it's going to probably end up, which is crazy. And without T.J. Watt, I get it. The Steelers just don't have the secondary. Joe Hayden is banged up. I think Lamar is in a great spot to bounce back here. I think Baltimore blows him out.
Okay, Pearce, bring us home here, man.
Yeah, I'm going to fade confidence in the Steelers. I have absolutely no confidence in the Steelers. I'm not a big Ravens guy either, but I believe that we're giving Lamar a little bit of a hard time lately. Just a tough matchup. I mentioned it before against Miami, blitzing him like crazy, and he had a poor performance. Last week against Cleveland, it really wasn't that terrible. He threw some costly interceptions in the first half, trying to force balls while they were driving downfield. They were moving the ball. The offense was looking fine. He just made some mistakes. Well, Pittsburgh doesn't blitz because they can't blitz because, as Reid mentioned, this is a bad defense. They have a bad overall DVOA, a bad rush DVOA, a bad pass DVOA. There's issues in secondary. They're not able to pressure quarterbacks. They don't do anything defensively that's going to be able to stop Lamar Jackson. And I think that we have just kind of gotten down on him a little bit. Maybe the bar was too high. And on the other side, the offensive line for the Steelers is terrible, continues to be terrible. And one of the things that the Ravens are doing well is applying pressure to the quarterback. I'm with Reid. I think this will be a blowout for the Ravens.